Well, we now seem to be live in preparation for tonight's quiz night. We're giving people 10 minutes opportunity to tune in, and also that gives me the opportunity to copy the link to the live feed and to put it up on our social media. So I will do that now while people are tuning in, and I hope that you are getting ready in anticipation for the quiz night, getting your drinks in, a cup of tea, a glass of wine, beer, whatever your pleasure is. I hope that you are busily doing that at present. So I'm now on Facebook. I'm going to Chesterfield Parish Church and I'm putting in the quiz night details. I think. Let's see what it's come up with. Let's see what this shows. Check that it's actually bringing in the right thing. No, it's not. How annoying. Okay, let's try again. Let's see what this does. 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 Some very interesting stuff. There we are. It seems to have done the trick. Yes, definitely. I'm now going to share that on my own Facebook. And then share it on Twitter. just in case people are interested. And I'll share it on my own Twitter as well. Welcome to Life of Oscar, who has subscribed. I don't know who Life of Oscar is, but welcome to you. A reminder to you that you will be answering 100 questions in 10 rounds. I will ask the questions twice. I will witter for a bit, and then I will repeat the questions. So you'll hear the questions 3 times, and then at the end of the round, I will repeat the questions again so that you have heard them. Kathy Walton is asking me, do we need pen and paper? If you wish to, that's fine. If you don't wish to, that's also fine. If you want to keep your score, I suspect that pen and paper is the way to do it. You might want to do it electronically. It's entirely up to you. So we currently have online Kathy Walton and Life of Oscar. We have 6 people watching. There is a live chat facility, which you're very welcome to use if you want to let me know that you are here. And also, if you want to do any feedback and you don't want to subscribe, we'll give your details to Google in order to do that. You can send feedback, questions, things like that to contact@crookedspire.org. That's contact@crookedspire.org. And on my right, on your left, there is your left. It'll look as if I'm looking left. On my right, anyway. There is, oh, the dog has come out of hiding. There is a screen which is showing me my emails as they come in. So I will see your emails as they come in if you send them to contact@crookedspire.org, and I will respond verbally to them. So if you miss a question, if you've got a query, if you want to give feedback, those are the opportunities. I have Rebecca Landers has just checked in. Hello, everybody. Hello, Rebecca. We now have 8 people online. We've got a couple more minutes to go. The dog is now lying down at my feet. He'll probably get bored and go away at some point. He got a little bit scared because I was talking to the computer, which is why he went and hid behind the chair, and then he came back out. He's a funny dog, aren't you, Louis? You're a funny dog. You've got sensitive hearing. He's a very sensitive soul, is Louis. We're still on 8 people who are logged in. We're heading towards the time. I will start on time because Life of Oscar wants to know how old Louis is. Louis is about 8. I've had him for 4 years. He was 3.5 or so when I had him as a rescue. Helen Phipps has just checked in saying evening, everyone. Hello, Helen. Hope you're okay. If Life of Oscar would like to tell me who Life of Oscar is, it's not compulsory, but just wondering who you are, whether I know who you are. Otherwise, just enjoy and have fun. That's what we're here for. We're now up to 13. We've got people logging in all the time. We're now up to 15. I don't know how current that figure is that appears at the top of my screen. Oh, it's Daniel. It's good to see you, Daniel. We've got Jill Ball with us as well. So we're beginning to get there. We've got 15 here. We're about half a minute off starting. We've got 15, 14. Somebody saw my face and logged back off. My face will continue to look shiny until the sun completely goes down. In fact, I can probably stop that by turning on the light in the study, which I'll do now. That may make things a little more balanced. You can see the dog is now following me in. No, my face is still shiny. The sun will have to go down before it stops doing that. Either that or somebody will have to come along and put powder on it for me. Okay, we're there or thereabouts at 7:30. I'll go back over what the rules are and what the procedure will be. We have here 10 rounds of 10 questions each. I will ask each question. I'll ask it twice. I'll give you a chance to get it written down or to start thinking about it. And then I will repeat the question and move on to the next question. Colin and Suzanne say hi. So that's what I will do with each round. And at the end of the round, I'll go back over the questions just in case you've missed anything. At the end of the first 5 rounds, we'll stop for 5 minutes for a drink or a comfort stop. I will go and get myself a glass of wine. And then at the end of the questions, we'll have another 5 minutes where you can go and make yourselves comfortable, whatever you need to do. And then I will give the answers. If it works out the same way that it did last week, it'll be about 10 to 9 by the time we finish. People can come and go. This will still be available on YouTube after the end. So if you want to go back over it, that's fine as well. Fiona Barrand has checked in by email, and I am now going to make a start. The first round tonight is sport. The first round is sport. And question 1, how old was Bobby Moore when he captained the England World Cup team in 1966? That's the first question. How old was Bobby Moore when he captained the England World Cup team in 1966? Well, that's a good question to be going on with. Some of you may remember that very vividly. It's been a constant thing in England, I think, to talk about beating Germany in 1966. People forget how narrow things actually were, even though it was a great victory. And the captain was the young Bobby Moore. And question 1 was, how old was Bobby Moore when he captained the England World Cup team in 1966? So we have the Hallam's here. Looking forward to great scores from that direction tonight. We'll move on to question 2. This question is by way of being a request question from a colleague. Who is the owner of Sheffield Wednesday? I hasten to add the question wasn't asked by the colleague, but I was asked if I could have a question about Sheffield Wednesday. And the question is, who is the owner of Sheffield Wednesday? So, if you are an owl, then you're the person who may well know that. On the other hand, you may well have that as general knowledge. The question was, who is the owner of Sheffield Wednesday? Question 3 was put in by request of the vicar, and it is, what is the largest points margin by which Wales have beaten England at Twickenham? Now, you were expecting that, weren't you? What is the largest points margin by which Wales have beaten England at Twickenham? not in Cardiff, but at Twickenham. Wales's biggest away points difference against England in an international at Twickenham. I won't mention how many times Wales have beaten England and things like that. We could have a lot of very embarrassing discussions about that, but we'll go on. Just to repeat the question, what is the largest points margin by which Wales have beaten England at Twickenham? And question 4. Who was the 1968 Wimbledon Ladies runner-up? Who was the 1968 Wimbledon Ladies runner-up? Now, I remember who the Wimbledon Ladies champion was, because I spent the time when they were playing in the rugby field in Pontypool at the end of a line of Cub Scouts waiting for the Prince of Wales to arrive. It was shortly after his investiture, and he was nearly 4 hours late. So we hung around, and there was a great cheer when we discovered who was actually the Wimbledon Ladies champion. But that's not the question. The question is, who was the 1968 Wimbledon Ladies runner-up? And here's one for the Irish among us. Question 5. What is the ball called in hurling? My father would have been able to answer that because he was very good at hurling, apparently, in his youth. What is the ball called in hurling? My father used to say that hurling was like rugby. It's a vicious game, a game for thugs, but always played by gentlemen. I don't know, because I know nothing about hurling. All I know is the answer to this question. What is the ball called in hurling? We move on to question 6, and to a famous footballer. The question is, what position did Franz Beckenbauer play? What position did Franz Beckenbauer play? Now, those of you who are willing to be distracted will be interested to know that in the background there has been another dog appearing in the doorway. Millie has been appearing. Millie has spent most of her time hiding when I've been doing things like this, but she's getting a bit bolder. So Millie has started to appear. You may actually see her. Question 6 was, what position did Franz Beckenbauer play? Question 7, another vicious game. What are croquet hoops often called in the USA? What are croquet hoops often called in the USA? Well, there's a question for you. Croquet is supposed to be a very ladies and gentlemanly game. It's a college game. It's a game just like there's Millie there in the background, which is associated with things like Pims and so on. But it is actually quite a vicious game. And I'm asking, what are croquet hoops often called in the USA? Question 8. One of the many times when it's impossible to park in Chesterfield is on this particular occasion. Who won the most recent T20 game at Queen's Park in Chesterfield? Who won the most recent T20 game at Queen's Park in Chesterfield? So that's an interesting part of the Chesterfield Festival of Cricket each year. I know many people will be hoping that we'll be able to get that again this year, that by the time July comes, we'll be out of lockdown. Let's hope so, because it's enjoyed by so many, and it's such a beautiful place to play and watch cricket. And the question was, who won the most recent T20 game at Queen's Park in Chesterfield? Now, this is something for those who know something about great cricketers. Question 9, who was the Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1970? 1970, 7-0. Who was the Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1970? A name to conjure with from my childhood, this name. Who was the Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1970? And then ringing the changes for sport. Question 10. In what year was the Fosbury flop first used as a high jump technique? In what year was the Fosbury flop first used as a high jump technique? Not that I was ever a high jumper, but when we had compulsory athletics in school, Fosbury flops were strictly forbidden. The reason being, very obviously, that there wasn't a very deep mattress to land on. In what year was the Fosbury flop first used as a high jump technique? I'll run back over those questions. How old was Bobby Moore when he captained the England World Cup team in 1966? Who is the owner of Sheffield Wednesday? What is the largest points margin by which Wales have beaten England at Twickenham? Who was the 1968 Wimbledon ladies runner-up? What is the ball called in hurling? What position did Franz Beckenbauer play? What are croquet hoops often called in the USA? Who won the most recent T20 game at Queen's Park, Chesterfield? Who was the Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1970? And finally, in what year was the Fosbury flop first used as a high jump technique? So those are the 10 sport questions. We move on now to round 2, which is sitcoms. Life in this house is a little bit like a sitcom at the moment, and I suspect you may feel the same. The first question then in sitcoms is, who played CJ in The Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin? Who played CJ in The Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin? The man who said, I didn't get where I am today by doing whatever. Who played CJ in The Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin? Question 2. What was Father Jack's surname in Father Ted? What was Father Jack's surname in Father Ted? Some of you were intrigued to know that last year I had to go on 2 separate sessions of overnight training in order to receive a curate, even though in a past life I'd actually delivered curate training. And in the second lot, we were asked to recollect our own experiences as curates. Many of you will know that I was a Roman Catholic and I lived in a presbytery with a priest and a housekeeper. And I said it is a little bit like a benign version of Father Ted, because Father Ted's humour is very much in the fact that it's not all that far away from real life. The question here is, what was Father Jack's surname in Father Ted? Question 3, one of my favourites from young days. Who was Corporal Jones's sweetheart in Dad's Army? Who was Corporal Jones's sweetheart in Dad's Army? One of the very few sitcoms which has remained funny and also had humour which isn't considered to be too politically incorrect today. Quite a work of genius, really. And the question was, who was Corporal Jones's sweetheart in Dad's army? Question 3, coming up to the present day. What is the youngest son's character name in Outnumbered? What is the youngest son's character name in Outnumbered? I want to know the screen name, the character name in the sitcom, not the actor's name. Outnumbered was quite revolutionary, really, because it gave the youngsters the opportunity to ad-lib some of their lines and so to appear a little bit more themselves than much sitcom had done previously. It's quite a challenging comedy, and some people find it very funny. The question is, what is the youngest son's character name in Outnumbered? Now, I had to ask a question about this. This is question 5, because of course the Crooked Spire appears in the titles for it. And the question is, who played the bishop in All Gas and Gaiters? Who played the bishop in All Gas and Gaiters? Those of you who are too young to have watched All Gas and Gaiters will like to know that it was about a bishop who lived in a cathedral in close proximity to an archdeacon, a dean, and who had Derek Nimmo as his bishop's chaplain. And it's all very gentle, and it's all, again, very true. And the question is, who played the bishop in All Gas and Gaiters? Moving on then to something which didn't appear on BBC One. Who wrote Butterflies? A little bit of a niche comedy, really, but it was a sitcom which went to several different series, so it couldn't have been that much niche. Who wrote Butterflies? Some will remember it as the first major appearance of Nicholas Lyndhurst, who went on to star in, what was that thing with David Jason? I never found it funny, but Nicholas Lyndhurst went on to a great career after that, and he was in this. Who wrote Butterflies? The next question. What does Robert Lindsay's character do for a living in My Family? Now, there's a comedy which is made by the quality of its principal actors. The question is, what does Robert Lindsay's character do for a living in My Family? I'll move on to question 8, which takes us back a bit. In what year was Hancock's Half Hour first shown on television? It was first a radio series, and then it moved to television. In what year was Hancock's Half Hour first shown on television? I'll go back and say what I said last year. If you don't actually know, then Robert Robinson used to encourage people on Brain of Britain to have a good guess, and you might be able to get this right by guessing. You might get the next one right by guessing as well. Question 9 is, who played Mr. Mackay in Porridge? Who played Mr. Mackay in Porridge? Mr. Mackay, you will remember, was the martinet who was the bane of Fletcher's life. Who played Mr. Mackay in Porridge? And then question 10, I think you'll either know this or you won't. In the Fawlty Towers episode Gourmet Night, who complained about the wrong-shaped chips? Who complained about the wrong-shaped chips? That was an interesting episode. You may remember that episode ended up with Basil attacking a car with a tree. But I'm not asking you about that. I'm asking, in the Fawlty Towers episode Gourmet Night, who complained about the wrong-shaped chips? So to recap that round on sitcoms, who played CJ in The Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin? What was Father Jack's surname in Father Ted? Who was Corporal Jones's sweetheart in Dad's Army? What is the younger son's character name in Outnumbered? Who played the bishop in All Gas and Gaiters? Who wrote Butterflies? What does Robert Lindsay's character do for a living in My Family? In what year was Hancock's Half Hour first shown on television? Who played Mr. Mackay in Porridge? And finally, in the Fawlty Towers episode Gourmet Night, who complained about the wrong-shaped chips? I'm being asked by Jill whether there's a bonus for knowing only Fools and Horses, which is the thing I was grasping after. No, I'm sorry, there isn't. You can have a brownie point, Jill. I'm sure you've had plenty of brownie points in the past. So we'll move on to round 3, which is about dogs. Finding interesting questions on dogs is not too difficult. And question 1 is, what sort of dogs has Her Majesty the Queen preferred to keep? You must be pretty unobservant if you don't know this one. What sort of dogs has Her Majesty the Queen preferred to keep? The Queen often pictured with these dogs. I think she still has one. There was a recent film with the Queen and 2 elderly dogs, one of whom was of this breed. What sort of dogs has Her Majesty the Queen preferred to keep? Question 2. This was controversial. In what year was tail docking made illegal in the UK? In what year was tail docking made illegal in the UK? There are certain exceptions for specific dog breeds which are used in specific sports, but there has to be evidence that the dog is going to be used in that sport, and it has to take place within, I think, 2 weeks of birth. But by and large, dogs are no longer allowed to have their tails docked, which means that if you meet a boxer, you need to be very careful, because a boxer's tail is like a whip and it will bruise your shins very easily. In what year was tail docking made illegal in the UK? Question 3. Which breed is considered to be the most intelligent? Which breed is considered to be the most intelligent? Now, that's an interesting question. There are all sorts of ways of measuring the intelligence of a dog. Some dogs from this breed have been shown to have the vocabulary or the vocabulary understanding of a 2-year-old human. Which breed is considered to be the most intelligent? And for question 4, we move into an area which is not my favorite, because I don't like this size of dog. What is the smallest recognized breed of dog? What is the smallest recognized breed of dog? And remember, I won't be checking your spelling. What is the smallest recognized breed of dog? Question 5. And what is the largest recognized breed of dog in terms of mass? What is the largest recognized breed of dog in terms of mass? I've actually met a couple of these dogs, and they're bigger than me. If they stood up, they'd be taller, and even with a little weight on, they're a lot heavier and a lot more muscular. What is the largest recognized breed of dog in terms of mass? Question 6. What does the cocker mean in Cocker Spaniel? What does the cocker mean in Cocker Spaniel? And I'll give you a clue. It's got nothing to do with Joe Cocker. What does the cocker mean in Cocker Spaniel? That's interesting. If you want to think it through, think about what a Cocker Spaniel is for. That may help you. Question 7. For what purpose were dachshunds bred? For what purpose were dachshunds bred? Sausage dogs, if you prefer. Sausage dogs were and still are very popular in Germany. I once came across a sausage dog in Munich which had lost the muscle tone in its back and was sagging. So in order for it to go out for a walk without scraping its tummy on the floor, it had a roller skate tied to it so that it wouldn't scrape its tummy on the floor. The question, however, is for what purpose were dachshunds bred? Question 8. Which breed is considered best for ratting? Which breed is considered best for ratting? I read an account where, in order to deal with an infestation of rats, 9 or 10 of these dogs were taken out, and in the course of the day, they caught between them more than 700 rats. The question, which breed is considered best for ratting? Question 9. Which book in the Apocrypha has a dog accompanying the hero of the story? Which book in the Apocrypha has a dog accompanying the hero of the story? It's a wonderful story, and the dog trots along behind the hero as the hero leaves to do his heroic work, and we're told when the hero returns that the dog is trotting on behind as well. Just a sort of matter-of-fact thing, and yeah, I just find that rather lovely. I know I'm not the only person that does. The question is, which book in the Apocrypha has a dog accompanying the hero of the story? And then the last question of that round, question 10, this is too easy. What breed of dog was Lassie? What breed of dog was Lassie? There was a cartoon in the New Yorker some years ago which had on the one side of the cartoon somebody crying out, "Lassie, get help," and on the other side of the cartoon seeing Lassie sitting in a psychiatrist's couch. What breed of dog was Lassie? So the questions from that round, to recap: what sort of dogs has Her Majesty the Queen preferred to keep? In what year was tail docking made illegal in the UK? Which breed is considered to be the most intelligent? What is the smallest recognized breed of dog? What is the largest in terms of mass? What does the cocker mean in Cocker Spaniel? For what purpose were dachshunds bred? Which breed is considered best for ratting? Which book in the Apocrypha has a dog accompanying the hero of the story? And finally, what breed of dog was Lassie? Now that's the end of round 3. Round 4, something which is dear to some people's hearts: confectionery. I can see people thinking I might be able to answer some of these questions. And the first question is, what was the original name in the UK for Snickers? What was the original name in the UK for Snickers? When I first went to study abroad in 1977, they were called Snickers then, and we tended to resent them not being called what they were called here. And not many years later, they standardized on the name Snickers. What was the original name in the UK for Snickers? Question 2. How many glasses of full cream milk are claimed to be in a bar of Cadbury's Dairy Milk? You must have lived on the moon if you don't know this. How many glasses of full cream milk are claimed to be in a bar of Cadbury's Dairy Milk? Again, when I lived abroad, I used to crave Cadbury's Dairy Milk. I find it too sweet now. I suspect that's one of the penalties or maybe the privileges of aging. How many glasses of full cream milk are claimed to be in a bar of Cadbury's Dairy Milk? Question 3. What was the most famous advertising slogan for Mars bars? What was the most famous advertising slogan for Mars bars? In my father's general store, one of the things he majored on was confectionery, and I can remember him being completely scandalized when a Mars bar went up from threepence to fourpence. This is old pennies. Went up from threepence to fourpence, from a penny halfpenny in new pence to twopence in new pence. I have no idea how much a Mars bar costs today. Maybe somebody will put it in the live chat. What was the most famous advertising slogan for Mars bars? Question 4. What ingredient allows white chocolate to be called chocolate? What ingredient allows white chocolate to be called chocolate? That's a good one, especially being a fan of white chocolate. What ingredient allows white chocolate to be called chocolate? Question 5. What do blackjacks taste of? Be careful with this. Be careful with this. They can contain something else which sometimes appears dominant, but their main taste, which makes them into a blackjack, is of one thing. What do blackjacks taste of? I can't say I ever liked blackjacks, but there you are. What do blackjacks taste of? And question 6. What is inside a Cadbury's chocolate eclair? What is inside a Cadbury's chocolate eclair? Kathy Walton says Mars bars cost 79 pence. Well, 79 pence is 15. 80 pence is 16 shillings. So 79 pence would be 15 and 11 pence halfpenny. No, there you are. But the question here is, what is inside a Cadbury's chocolate eclair? Question 7, again something that my father used to sell and couldn't always get. Who made Five Boys chocolate? I can remember the advert for that in my father's shop. Who made Five Boys chocolate? I don't think you can get it at all now. But the question is, who made Five Boys chocolate? Question 8. Which religious group did the principal English chocolate families belong to? Which religious group did the principal English chocolate families belong to? That ought to be a reasonably easy question, or maybe not. Which religious group did the principal English chocolate families belong to? Question 9. What sort of toffee is commercially made in Derbyshire? What sort of toffee is commercially made in Derbyshire? For the sake of clarity, when I say what sort I actually mean what make, not what flavour. What make of toffee is commercially made in Derbyshire? And question 10, what does Caramac taste of? What does Caramac taste of? It's again a favourite from my youth, and you can't get it anymore. You can get posh versions of it, which are delightful. What does Caramac taste of? So to go back over the confectionery questions, what was the original name in the UK for Snickers? How many glasses of full cream milk are claimed to be in a bar of Cadbury's Dairy Milk? What was the most famous advertising slogan for Mars bars? What ingredient allows white chocolate to be called chocolate? What do blackjacks taste of? What is inside a Cadbury's chocolate eclair? Who made Five Boys chocolate? Which religious group did the principal English chocolate families belong to? What make of toffee is commercially made in Derbyshire? And what does Caramac taste of? Okay, then we'll move on to round 5 before the break. And round 5 is about gardening. Question 1. Which crop does a red Duke of York potato belong to? Which crop does a red Duke of York potato belong to? Red Duke of York is a wonderful traditional potato which goes very floury when cooked. It's very good for roasting and making chips as long as you don't let them fall apart. And if you boil it, you need to boil it in the skin. Kathy points out that blackjacks were made on a Friday in Chesterfield. Of course, I forgot to mention that at one point this is where most of them were made, although they are made by different confectioners all over the world. But we're on gardening now, and they don't grow in the garden. Which crop does a red Duke of York potato belong to? Question 2. What might you protect tender shoots against using broken glass? What might you protect tender shoots against using broken glass? And I do not recommend this as a gardening technique when you have dogs. Please, if you have dogs, don't use that as a gardening technique. It's apparently very useful, but please, if you have dogs, don't use it. The question is, what might you protect tender shoots against using broken glass? Question 3. Which bulb tends to be the first up as spring approaches? Which bulb tends to be the first up as spring approaches? Yeah, that should be an easy one, going by memory and observation only. You don't need expertise for that one. Which bulb tends to be the first up as spring approaches? Question 4. What is the difference between an English and a Spanish bluebell? What is the difference between an English and a Spanish bluebell? The English bluebell is the one you're more likely to see in the woods. The Spanish bluebell is the one you're more likely to see colonizing people's gardens. What is the difference between an English and a Spanish bluebell? Question 5. Which lilac colour is rarer, white or purple? Which lilac colour is rarer, white or purple? I'm very much aware that a white lilac can go purple. I don't know whether they go the other way. Wherever I've been, when I was little, we had a white lilac in the garden, and there's a white lilac in the garden here in the vicarage. And the question is, which lilac colour is rarer, white or purple? Question 6. When might you spread... Sorry, I'll start this one again. Why might you spread sharp sand on a lawn? Why might you spread sharp sand on a lawn? Interesting, the idea of having a perfect lawn. Again, if you have dogs, having a perfect lawn is not an option. And if you have border collies, especially ones that spin when they hear sounds they don't like, having a lawn at all is not an option. You end up having something that looks more like a rugby field at the end of the season. Why might you spread sharp sand on a lawn? Question 7. When is the best time to prune a magnolia? When is the best time to prune a magnolia? I've had magnolias follow me around vicarages. We had a magnificent one in Abertillery. There's a lovely one here. There was one in the rectory previous to that. And the question is, when is the best time to prune a magnolia? Question 8. Why is a yew hedge hard to grow? Why is a yew hedge hard to grow? I've had experience of trying to do this in churchyards. Why is a yew hedge hard to grow? Question 9. Dandelions are often hated by gardeners, includes my curate, but they actually have a widespread use in some countries. What is it? Dandelions are often hated by gardeners, but they actually have a widespread use in some countries. What is it? Well, that's an interesting one. Dandelions are very difficult to get rid of, as we know. Neighbours hate gardeners who allow dandelions to grow in their garden. Dandelions are often hated by gardeners, but they actually have a widespread use in some countries. What is it? And question 10. What colour is a Madame Alfred Carrière? What colour is a Madame Alfred Carrière? Not being a particularly good gardener, the Madame Alfred Carrière is something which I love and which I've planted and quite a number of, and quite successfully. What colour is a Madame Alfred Carrière? So we'll go back over those questions and then we'll have a break. Which crop does a red Duke of York potato belong to? What might you protect tender shoots against using broken glass? Which bulb tends to be the first up as spring approaches? What is the difference between an English and a Spanish bluebell? Which lilac colour is rarer, white or purple? Why would you spread sharp sand on a lawn? When is the best time to prune a magnolia? Why is a yew hedge hard to grow? Dandelions are often hated by gardeners, but they actually have a widespread use in some countries. What is it? And finally, what colour is a Madame Alfred Carrière? We're now going to take a break, You can take it as a drink break, as a comfort break, whatever you wish to do. I will walk around and stretch my arthritic bones and come back with a glass of wine, and we will start again on the dot at 20 past. So there's 5 minutes until 20 past. Thank you for your participation so far. We'll start again on the dot at 20 past. Thank you. Oh, Louis. Just in case you want to know what I'm drinking, this is a very lovely Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, and it was. You can tell that I'm running out of everyday wine. This was given me as a Christmas present by a kind parishioner. It is delicious. It is what I would call a proper wine. It doesn't taste like Ribena. It's not too dark and thick and gloopy. It has a nice light colour to it and a very, very pleasant nose. It's not to be confused with a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. The Montepulciano d'Abruzzo is produced in the Abruzzi Mountains and towards the east coast of Italy. This is produced in Tuscany, and it's akin, it uses the same grape as Chianti. It tends to be quite expensive, and sometimes you can find some which are not really worth what you pay for them. I have no idea what our kind parishioner paid for this, but it is quite delicious. So whatever you paid for it if you're there, or whatever they paid for it if you're not there, it was definitely worth the trouble. It's really lovely. Yeah, we have Malcolm and Linda had a delivery of wine today. Well, that's good considering. Well, no, I won't even go there. Just that they had a delivery of wine today. That means probably nobody else in Chesterfield. I think we've got a few people feeding back on how they're doing. Somebody says, "Oh, you should be able to see the live chat," but we may have the grand total of 3, right? Helen may have a few more. Did well, I think, on the gardening. Oh, really? We will have to see. As we're beginning to get close to 20 past. And what I will do, you'll probably still see me, but I won't see me because I'm going to give you a trailer for, unless I have lots of people having a go back at me saying we don't want another quiz, I'm going to try doing it again next week. And I'll give you the titles of the rounds for next week: TV drama, information technology, agriculture, engineering, cars, iconic buildings, tea and coffee, science fiction, weather, and trivia. So if that's attractive, that's what's probably going to be on the agenda for next week. I see Louise trying to decide whether to go behind the chair or not. And we have now just turned 20 past 8. So we will proceed with the second half. Are we ready? Are we ready? Round 6 is churchy things. Question 1. Name the next Archbishop of York. Name the next Archbishop of York. The present Archbishop of York is, of course, Sentamu, but his successor has been named, and I want you to name him. Name the next Archbishop of York. See, I've even given you a clue. Question 2. How many popes called Francis have there been? How many popes called Francis have there been? I have some email feedback. A tough first half. Well, we do try to please. Question 2. How many popes called Francis have there been? Question 3. Which friend of Dietrich Bonhoeffer was Bishop of Chichester during the Second World War? Which friend of Dietrich Bonhoeffer was Bishop of Chichester during the Second World War? A great ecumenist, which is why he met Bonhoeffer, a man of peace. It said that he was too much in favour of peace to have been Archbishop of Canterbury. But the question is, which friend of Dietrich Bonhoeffer was Bishop of Chichester during the Second World War? Question 4. Which vicar of Chesterfield became Bishop of Burnley and then Bishop of Beverley? Which vicar of Chesterfield became Bishop of Burnley and then Bishop of Beverley? That's a question. Some people think the vicar of Chesterfield thinks he's a bishop by dint of being vicar of Chesterfield, but that isn't actually the case. Which vicar of Chesterfield became Bishop of Burnley and then Bishop of Beverley? Question 5. In which church service is a chasuble used? In which church service is a chasuble used? I should hope for anybody that had anything to do with the Crooked Spire, that would be easy, but who knows? In which church service is a chasuble used? Question 6. Where is a Paschal candle kept outside Eastertide? Where is a Paschal candle kept outside Eastertide? A Paschal candle is kept in the sanctuary during Eastertide, although our Paschal candle is kept in my dining room at present. But where is it normally kept outside Eastertide? Question 7. What in church architecture is a squint? What in church architecture is a squint? We have at least one of them at the Crooked Spire. What in church architecture is a squint? I originally wrote that question, what is a squint? And I thought I better specify, otherwise I'll have to be entertaining lots of odd answers. Question 8. In which year was the first edition of the Book of Common Prayer published? In which year was the first edition of the Book of Common Prayer published? Cranmer's great work, the first edition, was actually a lot more similar to the Sarum Rite, which was the more common rite in the south of England, to the Latin of the Sarum Rite, than the later, more Protestant books of common prayer were. A fascinating developments, if you're into that sort of thing. But my question is, in which year was the first edition of the Book of Common Prayer published? Question 9. Some local knowledge required here. Whose life is depicted in the Great West Window in Chesterfield Parish Church? Here are, Colin, there's one that you can answer. Whose life is depicted in the Great West Window in Chesterfield Parish Church? Fascinating window, enormous, full of detail and life. If we had the funds to clean it and to redo the tracery, which was damaged when the building was sandblasted, I think it would be even more spectacular than it currently is. Whose life is depicted in the Great West Window in Chesterfield Parish Church? And question 10, a very specialist question. This is one for Helen. What variety of incense do we use in Chesterfield Parish Church outside Advent and Lent? Last week there was a question asking which one we use in Advent and Lent. This one is, what variety of incense do we use in Chesterfield Parish Church outside Advent and Lent? So I'll go over those questions again. Name the next Archbishop of York. How many popes called Francis have there been? Which friend of Dietrich Bonhoeffer was Bishop of Chichester during the Second World War? Which vicar of Chesterfield became Bishop of Burnley and then Bishop of Beverley? In which church service is a chasuble used? Where is a Paschal candle kept outside Eastertide? What in church architecture is a squint? In which year was the first edition of the Book of Common Prayer published? Whose life is depicted in the Great West Window in Chesterfield Parish Church? And what variety of incense do we use in Chesterfield Parish Church outside Advent and Lent? And we'll move on to round 7, which is wine and beer. Yes, I will, thank you. Cheers. Question 1. What flavouring would you expect to find in a kriek? K-R-I-E-K. What flavouring would you expect to find in a creek? I went to the country where these are produced on a school exchange as a teacher, and they were older children who went to families at the end of the day, and the staff in the school were very keen that we tried all the different alcoholic productions which they made locally, which included this. So it was a very interesting exercise. What flavouring would you expect to find in a creek? Question 2. What is grappa fermented from? What is grappa fermented from? A friend of mine obtains very pure grappa from a distillery on an industrial estate in southern Switzerland. And the raw material for this grappa is brought and dumped in a pit outside the distillery. It doesn't look particularly salubrious, but it comes up with a very, very lovely liquor. What is grappa fermented from? And more close to home, question 3. What is a Burton union? What is a Burton union? It's interesting looking at the history of brewing in Burton-upon-Trent and the different innovations there in the 19th century to produce purer and or more interesting beer. What is a Burton union? Question 4. In which country does Kronenbourg originate? In which country does Kronenbourg originate? Quite easy to get that one wrong if you're not careful. In which country does Kronenbourg originate? Question 5. How much German beer would you expect to find in a mass or measure? How much German beer would you expect to find in a mass or measure? That takes me back to an exchange trip as a pupil in school to Munich at the age of 16 and discovering the different measures in which German beer was served. How much German beer would you expect to find in a mass or measure? Question 6. Why is beer not taxed in Bavaria? Why is beer not taxed in Bavaria? That's something I didn't notice until I went to live there. And then you discover why beer is not taxed. Why is beer not taxed in Bavaria? Question 7. Which Italian province contains the Chianti area? Which Italian province contains the Chianti area? Also the area that produces this wonderful thing. Which Italian province contains the Chianti area? Question 8. What is South Africa's own native grape? What is South Africa's own native grape? And delicious that is too. One of my aims before too many years pass is to go and visit the wine producing areas of South Africa during the vintage. What is South Africa's own native grape? Question 9. Which is the most common German grape? Which is the most common German grape? I have to admit this is one of my favourites. And if I never had to drink any type of wine produced from any other grape, this would be it. Which is the most common German grape? And question 10, which red grape is the most commonly used in New Zealand? Which red grape is the most commonly used in New Zealand? So to go back over that round, what flavouring would you expect to find in a kriek? What is grappa fermented from? What is a Burton Union? In which country does Kronenbourg originate? How much German beer would you expect to find in a Maß or measure? Why is beer not taxed in Bavaria? Which Italian province contains the Chianti area? What is South Africa's own native grape? Which is the most common German grape? Which red grape is the most commonly used in New Zealand? Adam the Soundy has a bottle of Chianti in front of him, so Adam, cheers to you. Round 8, which is English literature. And question 1. Where were Chaucer's pilgrims heading to? Where were Chaucer's pilgrims heading to? A nice easy one to start off with. Where were Chaucer's pilgrims heading to? Question 2. In which year did George Orwell write 1984? In which year did George Orwell write 1984? I see an OEC there. Is that OEC at the wine and beer or OEC at the English literature? Question was, in which year did George Orwell write 1984? Question 3. How many of Shakespeare's plays are in 2 parts? It's not a trick question. How many of Shakespeare's plays are in 2 parts? Yeah, that's taking you back to school, some people. How many of Shakespeare's plays are in 2 parts? Question 4. In which of Shakespeare's plays does Sir John Falstaff play a part? In which of Shakespeare's plays does Sir John Falstaff play a part? Sir John Falstaff, of course, was very fond of sack, which was a forerunner of sherry. In which of Shakespeare's plays does Sir John Falstaff play a part? Question 5. Which verse form did Milton use in Paradise Lost? Which verse form did Milton use in Paradise Lost? One of the greats of English literature, which verse form did Milton use in Paradise Lost? Question 6. Who wrote Diary of a Nobody? Who wrote Diary of a Nobody? Probably the funniest thing to come out of Victorian culture. Who wrote Diary of a Nobody? Question 7, going back a bit. What is the earliest known poem in English? What is the earliest known poem in English? I thought I knew the answer to this, and I double-checked, and I didn't know the answer to it. At least I'd heard the answer, but I would have got this one wrong. Fortunately, I've checked and double-checked all the answers here. What is the earliest known poem in English? Coming forward a bit, question 8. Where is the setting of Tess of the D'Urbervilles? Where is the setting of Tess of the D'Urbervilles? I shouldn't have had this wine. D'Urbervilles. Okay. Where is the setting of Tess of the D'Urbervilles? Question 9. What was the name of John le Carré's Little Drummer Girl? What was the name of John le Carré's Little Drummer Girl? Fascinating novel. Not one of his most famous, but probably one of his most philosophical. What was the name of le Carré's Little Drummer Girl? And the final question of that round, question 10, where did Samuel Pepys work? Where did Samuel Pepys work? Very interesting. I read today that Pepys, of course, was there around in London during the Great Plague, and he claimed in his diaries to have lived better during the plague than he did normally because he had more time to drink good wine. But I'm not asking that. I'm asking, where did Samuel Pepys work? So that round again, where were Chaucer's pilgrims heading to? In which year did George Orwell write 1984? How many of Shakespeare's plays are in 2 parts? In which of Shakespeare's plays does Sir John Falstaff play a part? Which verse form did Milton use in Paradise Lost? Who wrote Diary of a Nobody? What is the earliest known poem in English? Where is the setting for Tess of the D'Urbervilles? What was the name of le Carré's Little Drummer Girl? And where did Samuel Pepys work? And we'll move on to round 9, which is current affairs. If you're like me and you have switched the news off for the last 3 weeks, then you may not be able to answer some of these. Question 1. In which city in China is the COVID-19 pandemic supposed to have been started? In which city in China is the COVID-19 pandemic supposed to have been started? And yes, I know that there are conspiracy theories and all manner of ideas about this, but this is the general understanding. In which city in China is the COVID-19 pandemic supposed to have been started? Question 2. Where does the European Parliament meet? Where does the European Parliament meet? You may have different views on the European Parliament, but the question isn't what do you think about it? It simply asks you, where does the European Parliament meet? Question 3. Who does Evan Davis work for? Who does Evan Davis work for? I was tempted in the dogged question to ask what was the name of Evan Davis's dog, which he uses quite often in his reportage. His dog is a whippet called Mr. Whippy. And like most whippets, it's a delightful, gentle dog. Who does Evan Davis work for? Question 4. Is Donald Trump's hair real? Is Donald Trump's hair real? To find the answer for this, I've taken quite a number of serious newspaper articles and photographs. Is Donald Trump's hair real? Question 5. Who was MP for Derby North until the last general election? Who was MP for Derby North until the last general election? Who was MP for Derby North until the last general election? Question 6. How many hereditary peers remain in the House of Lords? How many hereditary peers remain in the House of Lords? Interestingly, if any of this number cease to be sitting members of the House of Lords, either by resignation or death or sickness, then the hereditary peers who would previously have had the right to sit in the House of Lords have the right to elect new members to represent them. But I don't want the mechanism, I want to know how many of them there are. Question 7. How many overseas territories does the United Kingdom still have? How many overseas territories does the United Kingdom still have? And interestingly, this is not the same as how many territories still recognize Queen Elizabeth as head of state, because there are some territories which are self-governing or completely independent which still recognize Queen Elizabeth as head of state, but these are not independent territories. How many overseas territories does the United Kingdom still have? Question 8. Who is the leader of the Scottish National Party in Westminster? Who is the leader of the Scottish National Party in Westminster? Who is the leader of the Scottish National Party in Westminster? Question 9, and this is not a trick question. Who is the present Duke of Normandy? Who is the present Duke of Normandy? I don't think I'll comment at all on that one, because if I do comment, it might give away the answer. Who is the present Duke of Normandy? And finally, question 10. Let me show you, before I ask this question, something that appeared in the post today. These people haven't stopped working. It is a tax return. And fortunately, I do not come under this, but the question is, what is currently the highest rate of income tax? What is currently the highest rate of income tax? As in my lifetime, income tax has been up and down and all over the place, but I want to know what is currently the highest rate of income tax. And I'll go back over those. In which city in China is the COVID-19 pandemic supposed to have been started? Where does the European Parliament meet? Who does Evan Davis work for? Is Donald Trump's hair real? Who was MP for Derby North until the last general election? How many hereditary peers remain in the House of Lords? How many overseas territories does the United Kingdom still have? Who is the leader of the Scottish National Party in Westminster? Who is the present Duke of Normandy? And what is currently the highest rate of income tax? So you can take yourself a glass before we move on to the trivia questions. Gradually winding down here. And we'll begin with question 1. Where did either the engine go to be maintained and overhauled? Where did either the engine go to be maintained and overhauled? Either the engine being, of course, one of the works of genius produced by Oliver Postgate and Peter Firmin, to go with the clangers and Noggin the Nog and Bagpuss and just complete genius. Where did either the engine get maintained and overhauled? Question 2. What was a set-right machine used for? What was a set-right machine used for? Again, I'm not going to talk about that because it would be too easy for me to give away the answer, so I'll just repeat the question. What was a set-right machine used for? Question 3. Where was the first tarmac road in the world? Where was the first tarmac road in the world? Interestingly, Tarmacadam was actually invented successfully and patented by a Welshman in Darley in Derbyshire. So obviously the combination of Welsh and Derbyshire has been fruitful in the past. Whether it's fruitful today or not is up to you to decide, but the question is, where was the first tarmac road in the world? Question 4. What is a fourth wedding anniversary called? What is a fourth wedding anniversary called? What is a fourth wedding anniversary called? I suspect this is one you'll either know or not know. Question 5. Where is the major producer of flax in the UK? Where is the major producer of flax in the UK? Again, I could talk about that, but I'd probably give away the answer, so I won't. I'll just repeat the question. Where is the major producer of flax in the UK? Question 6. Who introduced the chili pepper to India? Who introduced the chili pepper to India? I've seen a number of recent TV cookery programs which have had the answer to this question. Who introduced the chili pepper to India? Question 7. In what year was the last Volkswagen Type 1 Beetle produced? In what year was the last Volkswagen Type 1 Beetle produced? Don't get confused with the new Beetle, which is not a Type 1. That's why I said the Type 1 Beetle. In what year was the last Volkswagen Type 1 Beetle produced? Question 8. Who provided food for the clangers? Who provided food for the clangers? I mentioned Postgate and Firmin, yet another work of their genius. Who provided food for the clangers? Question 9. Where is Kellogg's largest factory? Where is Kellogg's largest factory? Where is Kellogg's largest factory? And finally, question 10. What does the name B&Q stand for? What does the name B&Q stand for? The rumours going about that B&Q in Chesterfield will reopen tomorrow. Who knows? Some of them have reopened. Some of them are having click and collect delivery orders. But I want to know, what does the name B&Q stand for? So we'll go back over those. Where did Ivor the engine go to get maintained and overhauled? What was a set-right machine used for? Where was the first tarmac road in the world? What is a fourth wedding anniversary called? Where is the major producer of flax in the UK? Who introduced the chili pepper to India? In what year was the last Volkswagen Type 1 Beetle produced? Who provided food for the clangers? Where is Kellogg's largest factory? And what does the name B&Q stand for? So that's the end of the question part of the quiz. I am open to queries via the live chat and via email if there are any questions that you have missed. We'll take a brief break here and reconvene at 9 o'clock for the answers. And I'll get up and move about. Find out where the dog is. He's still behind the chair. Hello, Louis. Louis? Oh, you've gone to sleep behind the chair. Okay, I'm still checking. I can't see anybody that's asked for any repeats of the questions. We've got a couple of minutes to go before 9 o'clock. Now, earlier I gave a sort of trailer for what I might be thinking of in a third quiz night, but I'll need a little bit of feedback from you to see if you want one, especially after tonight. So if you want one, don't necessarily give the feedback now, but let me know. I've enjoyed doing these, so I'm quite happy to do one every Wednesday until this business is over. Here's the trailer for the one which I would like to do. The rounds are TV drama, information technology, agriculture, engineering, cars, iconic buildings, tea and coffee, science fiction, weather, and trivia. So that's where we are, and we're now here at 9 o'clock. And are you ready for the answers? Are you ready for the answers? Okay, we'll start off with sport then. Pens at the ready. Bobby Moore was 25 when he captained the England World Cup team in 1966. 25. The owner of Sheffield Wednesday, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly, is Dejphon Chansiri, spelled Dejphon Chansiri. Dejphon Chansiri. The largest points margin by which Wales have beaten England at Twickenham is 13 points in 1903 and in 1987. That's 13 points. The 1968 Wimbledon ladies runner-up was Judy Tegart. I hope I pronounced that right. Tegart. You don't tend to remember the names of the runners-up. The ball in hurling is called a sliotar, spelled Sliotar. Franz Beckenbauer began midfield, was for much of his life a central defender, and invented almost single-handed the position of sweeper. So I will accept any of those. Croquet hoops are often called wickets in the USA. Derbyshire won the last T20 on July the 20th last year in Queen's Park. Alan Knott was the Wisden Cricketer of the Year in 1970. Knotty. And the Fosbury flop was first used as a high jump technique in 1968. So that's round one. I'll leave you to recover and go back then to round two. The actor who played CJ in Reggie Perrin was John Barron. Interestingly, John Barron also played the Dean in All Gas and Gaiters some while earlier. But the question was about CJ, that's John Barron. Father Jack's surname was Hackett, Jack Hackett. Corporal Jones's sweetheart was Mrs. Fox. The youngest son in Outnumbered is Ben. The actor who played the bishop in All Gas and Gaiters was William Mervyn. Most people would remember Derek. Oh, what's his name? Oh, come on. I was thinking more of Robertson Hare, who played the Archdeacon, because he quite famously in the last series of All Gas and Gaiters started to become himself Gaga and lose his lines. Derek Nimmo was the bishop's chaplain, but I asked for the bishop, who is William Mervyn. Carla Lane wrote Butterflies. Robert Lindsay's character is a dentist in My Family. Hancock's Half Hour was first shown on television in 1956. Mr. Mackay in Porridge was played by Fulton Mackay. And the obnoxious little boy who complained about the wrong-shaped chips in Gourmet Night in Fawlty Towers was called Master Ronald Heath. Master Ronald Heath. Okay, round 3. Her Majesty the Queen likes to keep corgis. Tail docking was made illegal in the UK in 2006. The most intelligent breed is considered to be the Border Collie. The smallest recognized breed of dog is the Chihuahua. The largest in terms of mass is the English Mastiff. Cocker Spaniels are so called because they were developed for hunting woodcock. Dachshunds were bred for hunting badgers. Generally, Jack Russells are considered best for ratting, although there are various other terriers that are very good at it. The book in the Apocrypha, which has a dog accompanying the hero who is called Tobias, the book is the Book of Tobit. And Lassie was a rough collie. So that's round 3. The confectionery round. In the UK, Snickers used to be called Marathon. The claim for a bar of Cadbury's Dairy Milk is 1.5 glasses of full cream milk. It doesn't actually say what size glasses, but that's what it says in the claim. The most famous advertising slogan for Mars bars, of course, is "A Mars a day helps you work, rest and play." White chocolate is allowed to be called chocolate because it contains cocoa butter. It doesn't actually contain any cocoa as such, but it contains cocoa butter. The principal ingredient of blackjacks is aniseed. Many people think it's licorice, and some blackjacks have licorice in them. But to be a blackjack, you have to have aniseed in it, in you. Inside a Cadbury's chocolate eclair, you will find chocolate. It's that strange sweet which has the toffee on the outside and the chocolate in the middle. Five Boys chocolate was made by Fry's. The principal English chocolate families belonged to the Quakers. Of course, Thornton's toffee is commercially made in Derbyshire. And Caramac tastes of caramel. It was Macintosh's caramel. Caramac tastes of caramel. Okay, so that's that round. Round 5, gardening. Red Duke of York potatoes are first earlies. You'd use broken glass to protect tender shoots against slugs. Snowdrops tend to be the first up as spring approaches. A Spanish bluebell has broader leaves than an English bluebell. White is the rarer colour for lilac. Sharp sand might be spread on a lawn to lighten up the soil as it descends, and also to level out the lawn, although it's not often recommended these days. The best time to prune a magnolia is in the autumn, because a magnolia sets its flowers and its new growth in the late autumn and early winter. And if you prune it during the winter, you lose all next year's growth. Yew hedge is hard to grow because it grows so damned slowly. And it's very hard to get the yew plants to grow together. It takes years and years and years. Dandelions in some countries are used as a salad vegetable. And they have a reputed effect, which may end up with a wet bed, as they're called in French, le pissenlit. And a Madame Alfred Carrière is white. It is a wonderful David Austin rose, which is white with a very, very little red at the very base that you wouldn't notice at the very base of the petal. It is a lovely, lovely rose. It's a climbing rose, and it flowers profusely all the way through the season if you look after it. Okay, round 6. The next Archbishop of York is called Stephen Cottrell. There's only been one Pope Francis, and he's so wonderful, I think it will be very hard to repeat. Which the friend of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was Bishop of Chichester, is George Bell. Of course, Martin Jarrett was Vicar of Chesterfield and then became Bishop of Burnley and Bishop of Beverley. A chasuble is used for the celebration of Mass. The Paschal candle is kept in the baptistry outside Eastertide. A squint is a window or a spy hall to enable people to see the Mass being celebrated without actually going to the space where the celebration is taking place. And there is a squint in the Holy Cross Chapel in the parish church, which enables you to see from that chapel to the high altar. The first edition of the Book of Common Prayer was published in 1549, 2 years after Henry VIII died. Joshua's life is depicted in the Great West Window, and the variety of incense used most of the year in Chesterfield Parish Church is called basilica. Moving on to wine and beer, the flavouring you'd expect to find in a kriek is sour cherry. A kriek is what's called a lambic beer, which means that it's fermented using wild yeasts which come from the air. So it has a sour taste, a little bit like sourdough bread, really. And it is flavoured with sour cherry. Grappa is fermented from what remains after wine is made. That's all the pressings, all the stalks, everything that's left. You don't throw it away, you make grappa from it. A Burton union is where the casks are joined together with pipes. These were invented partly because it made it more easy to have full casks and to flush through imperfections, to clear out any extra dead yeast and things like that which accumulated in the beer. But they also served the purpose of maintaining a consistent yeast strain. And the only beer that's brewed today using a Burton union is apparently Marston's Pedigree. Kronenbourg originates in France, in Strasbourg, and its particular flavour comes from the fact that the hops grown for Kronenbourg come from Alsace. You would find a litre of beer in a Mass or measure. Beer is not taxed in Bavaria because it's considered there to be a foodstuff. True. The Chianti area is to be found in Tuscany, or Toscana if you prefer the Italian. The native grape of South Africa is Pinotage. The most common German grape is the Riesling. And the red grape most commonly used in New Zealand is the Pinot Noir. And so we move on to English literature. Chaucer's pilgrims were heading for Canterbury. George Orwell wrote 1984 in 1948. All he did was switch around the two final figures of the year. There is only one Shakespeare's play which is in two parts. There is another play, I think it's Henry VI, which is in three, but the only one in two parts is Henry IV. Sir John Falstaff plays a part in three Shakespeare's plays: Henry IV Part 1, Henry IV Part 2, and The Merry Wives of Windsor. He's mentioned in Henry V, but he doesn't actually appear. Milton's verse form for Paradise Lost was blank verse. Diary of a Nobody was written by George and Weedon Grossmith. The earliest known poem in English is Caedmon's Hymn, which is referred to in his ecclesiastical histories by the Venerable Bede. Caedmon's Hymn is thought to come from 670, 680, something like that. I may have got that date wrong, but certainly from the 7th century. Tess of the D'Urbervilles is set in a fictionalized version of Wessex. Le Carré's Little Drummer Girl was called Charlie, and Samuel Pepys worked and initially made his name at the Admiralty, and he was responsible for a great deal of reorganization there. So he wasn't just good at writing diaries, he was actually really good at his job. Round 9, the current affairs round. Wuhan is the city in China where the pandemic is supposed to have started. The European Parliament meets in Strasbourg and Brussels. Evan Davis works for the BBC. Donald Trump's hair is apparently real. It is somewhat enhanced by hair product and by the way in which he combs it so that it avoids showing his bald patch. And he apparently takes medication as well to thicken it. But there is no reason to think that it is anything but real. Question 5. The MP for Derby North until the last general election was the unpleasant Chris Williamson, who was too unpleasant even for Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party, and was thrown out. And he was then thrown out by his electorate. He spent quite a lot of time, rather than representing his constituents, trying to get rid of MPs from the Labour Party who weren't quite as left-wing as he was. I'm surprised that he ever became an MP at all. I'll probably get heckled for that, or, well, anyway, his name is Chris Williamson. There are 92 hereditary peers in the House of Lords. There are 14 overseas territories, which the United Kingdom still has. Ian Blackford is the leader of the Scottish National Party in Westminster. The Duke of Normandy is Her Majesty the Queen. And that goes all the way back to William of Normandy, who was Duke of Normandy before he came in 1066 and carried out, or started off, his conquest by beating Harold and became king himself. The Duke of Normandy is Her Majesty the Queen. And the highest current rate of income tax is 45%, at least in the UK. And the last round. Either the engine was maintained and overhauled at Pontypool Road. That always pleased me because Pontypool Road was only a mile from where I was born. A set-right machine was used for issuing bus and rail tickets. The first tarmac road in the world, I said it was invented and patented by a Welshman at Denbigh, and actually it wasn't too far away where the first tarmac road was. It was Radcliffe Road in Nottingham. Radcliffe Road in Nottingham. A fourth wedding anniversary is called a linen anniversary. The major producer of flax, which of course is used to make linen in the UK, is Northern Ireland. And much of the heraldry of Northern Ireland includes linen or flax in it. The chili pepper was introduced to India and to Africa and a number of other places by the Portuguese. The last Volkswagen Type 1 Beetle was produced in 2003 in Mexico. Of course, the food for the clangers was produced by the Soup Dragon. Kellogg's largest factory, apparently in the world, is in Trafford Park in Manchester, Trafford Park. And the name B&Q stands for the two founders of the business, Block and Quayle, who founded it in Southampton in 1969. Well, we'll give a few minutes for anyone to ask for me to repeat any of the answers, and for anyone to say whether they have had enough or whether they'd like another one next week. Also for people, if they want to post their scores or to offer any feedback or to ask for counselling or anything similar. We've stuck, like last week, we've stuck around the 18, 19, 20 mark, so I'm very happy with that. And if, as I say, if this has been well received, then please do ask for more, because I will enjoy doing more. But if it's not well received, then there are plenty of other things I can find enjoyment in doing. So I'll wait another little while to see how people have done. I've forgotten I've been too busy talking to finish my wine. No feedback at all. Does that mean everybody's happy? Does that mean everybody's finished? Are you all arguing over the questions? Don't forget not to argue with me over the questions, or I'll dock you the point. Oh, you seem quite stunned. Well, if everybody's okay, I'm going to wind up. I'm going to finish my wine. I may go and have a bath, and I will go to bed, and I hope have a good night's sleep, which I hope will be what you do as well. Good night. Have a pleasant night. Keep safe. Keep well. One final memory. I was thinking as I was doing this back to 1972 and 1974, when we played cards during the power cuts. Somebody's asking for an easier quiz next week. A most enjoyable thing. Oh, we've got some scores. I won't read them out. There we are. So this is the quite. I thought that would be an easier quiz than the week before, because the subjects were better known. But anyway, I've given you the subjects. We'll see how we do if we have a quiz next week. But I'd been thinking back to how we used to get the next door neighbour around, which of course you can't do now, and play cards and use our time during the power cuts. And of course, this is a way of using our time sociably under the current circumstances. So thank you for being here, and thanks for everything you're doing to keep yourselves safe. And I've had another request for another one next week. And Pauline Pinder-Packard is very grateful for the Sheffield Wednesday question. So with that positive note, I will sign off and say good night, God bless, sleep well, and see you soon. Bye-bye.